Hello and welcome to this NET English Back to Basics video, focusing today on AQA Language Paper 2, Question 3. Now, as ever, the idea in these videos is that we'll be talking through a really simple summary of how the question works and some top tips and good advice about how to approach it in the exam. Now, when you come to this question in the exam, you should already have read both sources and answered questions 1 and 2. Now, question 3 is another of these questions that just does what it says on the tin. It's about language, so again, the words and the techniques that are used. And it's 12 marks on this paper. So using that timing as calculation, you've got 15 minutes. Unlike paper 1, you don't get the right bit of the extract, and it could be about either source. So it's really, really important in the exam that you make sure you're talking about the right text. As with paper 1, you're essentially marked again on 3 things. First of all, what is it? So what is the technique or the method or the feature, whatever you call it, means the same thing, but what is it you're talking about? Secondly, where is it? What's the quotation that backs it up? Thirdly, what does it do? What is the effect of the feature? Now, because you've got longer on this question than you did have on paper 1 for the analysis question, it's worth aiming for 3 paragraphs. And what that means is you're looking to find 3 features. As previously, for each one, it's also a good idea, after you've talked about what the feature is, where it is and what it does, to then talk about some of the words that have been used. And as ever, talking about individual words is always a safe way to analyse. Just to repeat the top tip I gave for Language Paper 1, Question 2, there can obviously be any number of features, but I tend to think that the ones you always find are semantic fields, imagery, so similes, metaphors, that sort of thing, and juxtaposition. So for this question, I'm focusing here, just for this question on this paper, on source A, lines 13 to 28. So I've ruled that off. Now, in a different paper, it could equally be source B, and they would tell me that. Here, it's source A. So I might, for this bit, pick out, say, the simile, comparing the sudden clouds to a smoke machine. So that's what it is, right? And do make sure you're specific. It's a metaphor of something, a semantic field of something. Here, it's a simile of a machine to describe the clouds. So I got the quotation, the clouds. It was as if a gigantic smoke machine had suddenly been turned on. That's easy. That's where it is. So I've got my where, what, and I've got my where. I've also got then the effect I want to write about. The idea that it's a sudden shift that blinds him and surrounds him, and that it almost feels like someone's doing it deliberately. So that's what it does. That's what the effect. So I've got what it is, where it is, and what it does. Now, this idea of zooming in then, I think I'd also want to talk about maybe the adjective gigantic. I think it's interesting because it makes it feel overwhelming, like this is overpowering and threatening. And that's what I'd call my zoom. And I'd build that in after talking about the effect of the feature. And again, I'd be aiming for about 3 of those in the time that I've got. So my paragraph as a whole would end up looking something like, on climbing further up the mountain, the writer uses a simile to describe the abrupt appearance of the cloud cover, as if a gigantic smoke machine had suddenly been turned on. The effect of the simile is to suggest that it's a sudden shift that blinds him and surrounds him, and that it almost feels like someone's doing it deliberately, with the adjective gigantic showing that he feels the weather is suddenly overpowering and threatening. Now, if I do want to push for higher marks on this question, the advice is the same as the equivalent question on paper 1. I'd want to be aiming to write more about what I've chosen. So is there another way of interpreting the quotation or the word? Is there a second layer of inference? Yeah, is there a contrasting interpretation possible? I could instead zoom in on another word to develop it further, or make links between this and another bit of the section that I'm analysing. It's also worth seeing, I think on this one in particular, the bigger picture. What's the overall intention of the writer? What's the overall effect of the language? And that's Language Paper 2, Question 3, done. As ever, don't forget, there is the whole range of videos on the Net English YouTube channel, covering every other topic and aspect you could possibly want to know about. Thank you very much for your time today.